Dave Scott Hub Media. I'm with Barb from Dover Apothecary. Barb, how are you today?
I'm great, Dave. How are you?
Perfect. I got your email in front of me for the October edition of the Hub, and I got a ton of questions. But let's start with the title because I think that it's pretty descriptive, and I want you to sort of explain to the folks what you're talking about. Life Unscripted, Deeper Connections. Go.
Yes. All right. Well, I have noted over the last, probably good year and a half that a lot of my clients, my family members, friends, neighbors, that there's a lot of anxiety and stress out there. Just everyday communication that people have confessed that they are feeling very stressed by how to sort of navigate social situations and not necessarily even wanting to put themselves into social situations. And so it really got me thinking about the importance of communication and that there's a trust and safety within that communication, but also ways that we can help be better listeners and conversationalists to support better relationships.
It's there's so many places we can go with this conversation because I think a lot of times what you're sort of describing too is people will come to you and your approach is holistic, which is using the natural as much as you can. But at the same time, sometimes they just need to talk first, don't they, to get that release so that you can find the deeper problem, or not, I don't want to say problem, but maybe something else that's bothering them to figure out how that's going to fit in with your program.
Yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. And regardless of what they've come to me for, when my whole model of a consultation has entirely changed from the very first two consults that I ever gave, because I did hours and hours of prep work, with sort of a predetermined outcome for that consultation for my first two clients. And when they were actually in front of me in my office, it ended up being nothing that they had previously shared with me or written on their intake forms. And it was such a valuable lesson right then and there that I have to see the person in the moment and help them guide themselves from where they are at that point in time, and that the rest of it is very extraneous. So, the consultation it's really evolved a great deal, and it's very rewarding for the person that's across from me because I'm not facilitating or taking away from their power. I'm helping them step into themselves and figure things out. And it's with leading questions. We've talked about that before. It's not saying, gosh, that must have made you angry, or gosh, you must have been scared, because that only lets the person give a one-word answer technically. So if we say, well, how did that make you feel? And then suddenly a door has been opened and they are having to think through that. And then it's, what could you have done, do you think, instead of that? What would that have done? And so those types of leading questions, regardless of the form of relationship, they really show that we're engaged with the person and that we care about the person.
It's funny because we're going to quantify this and say Barb is not a therapist, but what you do is you're finding what you're getting to is that root of that problem that might be bothering them. Maybe it's the stomach, but you've got to ask those questions that sort of lead, because a lifestyle or maybe a situation that's occurred in your life can have that effect too on your body because you're the stress of dealing with it, right? Mm-hmm. So there's lots of little angles that way you got to look at. When people talk to you and they sort of, maybe you find out there's something else that's happened, is it almost a relief to them because they're able to talk to you about it?
Yes, most definitely.
Okay.
There are a lot of Kleenex boxes in my office because people will just randomly, it's like, I don't know why this is upsetting me. I don't know why I'm crying, but you're just allowing them to process and to sort and to navigate through. One of my favorite tools is what I call a food diary that I give my clients. And on that, it's not just their food intake, but it's how they felt that day. It's, whether they've had regular bowel movements, how much water, but they start to make connections between the cause and effect of the things that they're doing on a daily basis. So I don't have them do it for me. They don't have to bring it back and say, here's my homework. It's not that kind of experience, but it's simply that, if they've come because they're having digestive issues, they're empowering themselves through doing this exercise, because then they start to see, oh, yes, you told me that food's not necessarily the best thing for this situation, but now I can actually see it. So we're just allowing them to be their own guide. We're not taking away the power from the other person, but we're really letting them have a deeper understanding of themselves. And that is, regardless of the type of relationship, it's a beautiful thing to be able to do for another person, but it also makes your interactions with them that much richer.
I think a lot of ways that shows the value, what you're just talking about, that value of that first little step they take to rebuilding their health. And just that, like you said, with looking at your diet, it's such a little thing, but it's such a big thing. Your mental health aspect, if you're not feeling great, you might eat a bowl of ice cream. You know what I mean? Like you're just not really regulating yourself to think it through properly. So that becomes such a character in your lifestyle, looking at that and going, oh, it's right in front of them and they've written it down and they already know. So it's almost self-motivating, isn't it? That way.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. And I love that self-motivation. I love it when people realize that they don't have to give their power away, that they have it within themselves. And, I do have several courses over the years that I've taken as, in the counseling realm, but not a certified counselor by any means. But it is all part of that holistic approach, because you are examining all aspects of somebody's life. It's not just your nutrition. You could have the best diet in the world. You could take the best supplements in the world. But if somebody has ridiculous levels of stress and anxiety that they're not finding their own ways to cope with appropriately, those things are just extraneous. They can only do so much if they're not looking after those aspects. So it's a multifaceted, but it's also an exercise in empowering ourselves if we want to learn and grow and make improvements.
This is a little off topic question, but I got to go there now, because what do you think is the incubus to get people to actually take the first step? Because we talked a little bit, you mentioned anxiety there, where a lot of people are just afraid to come and see you or to have that conversation. Mm-hmm. So what do you think, what causes them? Is it the threshold of not feeling well, the mental aspect? Like your door's open. Like they just have to call and do a consult with you. What do you think holds people back sometimes?
I think that fear of change. They know they have to make changes, but sometimes it's just not having those steps, not knowing what those steps are. They recognize that something must change because it's not serving them to keep doing what they're doing. But it's that one thing that is destructive to them, but also a source of comfort to them, that they don't necessarily want to be told they should let that go. And I don't tell people that they have to change anything, because it's not an authoritarian sort of position that I'm in. It's guiding them if they're motivated. So, taking that step to reach out in the first place, that's massive. But from there, it's about them trusting me and building a relationship that they know that they can share and that I will support them every step of the way. And I'll do it their way, because that's what I'm, designed to do. It's not a preset script. So as soon as they realize that it's not necessarily this program that's got no give or take, because how many times have we been, told by somebody and it puts up a wall right away the second you tell somebody. But when you let them explore themselves and figure out why they're doing what they're doing, that's when the magic happens.
I got to ask, because there's the swing on this the other way, that in life you come across people that think they already know everything they need to know, and they're going to tell you what they need. But you know yourself that that's okay. But I mean, at the same time, you got to change that way of thinking when they come to see you, and like they're saying, well, this is what I need. This is what's wrong with me. Here's what. But you're saying, well, no, you can't say no. Well, why don't we look at a bigger picture? How would you deal with someone in that scenario? I guess that's my question.
My first question would be, well, how long have you been trying that, and what do you feel has worked in doing it that way?
Yeah.
And they have to stop for a second. I mean, obviously you want it to be in a manner that's not accusational in any way, because it's just that will put up walls really quickly in a communication where somebody perhaps feels judged already through their life, and maybe that's why they are representing themselves the way that they are. That there's that vulnerability there. So it's just first get to know the person, first get to know their language, first get to, let them understand that there is no judgment here, that it is a safe space, that, we just talk about. And if all of it, if their first step is just learning how to drink more water in a day, and, that's still something. If somebody's not hydrated enough, it may be just one more serving of vegetables a day, but it's just putting it in their language and putting it within their power to make those changes. Just looking into aspects of where that person's strengths are and helping guide them into that. And once they realize it's within themselves, it really is, it's hugely rewarding to see how that person can grow. But I don't like when people give their power away.
So now we know how Barb's going to deal with me when I show up at her door. Claiming to know everything, right? After all these years of videos, maybe I've learned something. Who knows? Anything else? Anything else you want to add today before we wrap up?
I think that one of the biggest services we can do people is, when we don't know something right away, is saying so. Like, I mean, I've been in this field for 35 years, Dave, and the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know, and I have no problem telling me something. You know what? I don't know. I'm going to look that up for you so that I can guide you in the right direction. People really respect that. They respect that far more than somebody that just verbal vomits science at them. It's like you need to be able to make it applicable to the individual, and not so broad-based. And it's a wondrous thing when people get to discover what they're made out of.
Building a relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
It's important. How do people get a hold of you? Email, phone number? What's good?
Yeah, email Barb at healthywellandwise.ca, and phone number 519-410-3544. Text or call. And obviously, if you get my voicemail, it's because I'm with a client or family or walking the dog. So
that number again is 519-410-3544. Folks, give Barb a call. Thanks for doing this today. I really appreciate your time. I know you're busy, but take care and
you too.
have fun.
My pleasure.